In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold. The Abracast. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
The Many Lessons of Zarathustra, Part 7. I'm John Towers, and this is Wednesday Book Club. We're still chipping our way through Thus Spake Zarathustra. And every once in a while, we jump out of Thus Spake Zarathustra to examine the lessons of Zarathustra. So this is a Lessons of Zarathustra episode. It's the 7th such episode. And I got the book out again today, and I was trying to do the math, trying to figure out how many more of these episodes we got to do. And I'm like, oh, brother. Like Alanis Morissette said, you know how she welcomed people to bite off more than they can chew? That's what I did it. Anyhow. If you're playing along at home, this is when you summon your vessel of the art and you raise your glass that has the formula for your weapon of mass distraction, and you thank my Subscribe Star supporters. Thank you guys very much. And Patreon people, thank you guys very much. We got a new Patreon guy. I mentioned last episode, Ryan Sexton. He was like, I just got through your Kabbalah episodes and I just felt like I needed to send you some money, basically. So that was very cool of him. Thank you very much. So here, raise your glass to the support. Without you guys, none of this could be possible. You know, running a free podcast is not free. So we're just going to jump into it here. Where are we starting this episode? Where do we leave off? All right, with all the lessons episodes, we go to 3 separate but equal sources. There's a summary that we do that's from Sparknotes. And then there's an existentialism of Thus Spake Zarathustra that we do, and then we also follow it up with Grade Saver. So as I'm going through each of these speeches that we've talked about on the Zarathustra, Thus Spake Zarathustra episodes, we hit that speech, and then we go through the summary from Sparknotes. We talk about what the existentialism paper says, and then we wrap it up with the Grade Saver stuff. So as I'm transitioning through this, I'm trying not to keep calling it out, because as I was re-listening to some of these episodes, it gets annoying that I keep recalling it out, but they're important to delineate them somehow, because they're each talking about sort of like a different angle of it. So if I do it, I'm sorry. But if I don't do it, it's only because I'm trying to make it clear, right? Okay. So the first speech is on human prudence, or on human cleverness, depending on the translation you are using. Sparknotes. Zarathustra claims to have 3 kinds of human prudence. First, he suggests that it is better to be deceived from time to time than always to be on guard for deceivers. Second, he admires vain people because of their efforts to please are entertaining. and because they are unaware of their own modesty. Third, he scoffs at the small things that people call evil, suggesting that greatness is only possible through great evil. Existentialism says, Zarathustra mocks those who takes pride in being good and just. Verily, you who are good and just, there is much about you that is laughable, and especially your fear of that which is hitherto been called the devil. Grade Saver says, in this speech, Zarathustra asked his disciple to try to understand his double will. And he explains how he longs for the overman, yet is restrained by his love of humanity. This love of humanity is a prudence that Zarathustra realizes he must abandon in order to achieve his goal of the overman. He realizes that though he loves humanity, he actually shows too much favor to the vain. This has been holding him back. He is entertained by these vain people, so he spares them. He must rid himself of the hope of enchantment that he feels for mankind. These are prudences that only weigh him down. The fourth prudence Zarathustra outlines in this chapter is the fact that he must hide himself from the people in order to achieve the overman. Because the people are so estranged from greatness. Listen to that point, man. Holy shit. We literally live in an age of mediocrity. You know what I mean? So he's saying in order to achieve, you have to alienate yourself. Man, that's a wonderful insight. That the overman would seem terrible. It's also, not only is it a great oversight, it's actually it's actually a way I'm going to add to being a homebody. I'm like, sorry bros, I can't go out with happy hour to you with you because, you know, I'm great and, you know, you guys aren't. The overman would seem terrible to them in his kindness. Zarathustra is preparing the people for his absence. He is coming to terms with the will to power that he will need to find in order to master time. So I've talked about this recently, that I'm starting to use the Lemite stuff, the Crowley stuff that I've been reading for the podcast, and this Zarathustra, this Nietzsche stuff that I've been reading for the podcast. I've been trying to put it to practical application. And this week, so by the time you're listening to this, it'll have been over. But I have a 72-hour fast scheduled. And so this looking back on it, so I did a couple of 24-hour fasts to like prep, and then I did a 48-hour fast, and then I did a 62-hour fast. So I'm doing a 72-hour fast the week I'm recording this. So a lot of this stuff, like looking at it now, is like, oh yeah, when you're fasting, you want to be by yourself, bro. You don't want to be around people. They're heating up fucking, I don't know, Hot Pockets in the break room. You don't want to have anything to do with that. They're bringing like ribs, the leftovers in for lunch. You don't want to be around any of that shit. Anyhow, moving to the next one, the stillest hour. Again, it depends on what, the stillest hour. Zarathustra leaves the people once more to strengthen himself in solitude. He's like fucking Superman. He's got to go to his fortress of solitude. He knows but is still unable to speak about the culmination of his philosophy, which we shall see in part 3, is the eternal reoccurrence, which started me on this whole fucking thing anyways. I've told the story many times. The stillest hour. This is the Existentialism paper. Zarathustra returns to the solitude of his cave, this time without joy. His angry mistress, the stillest hour, tempts him. You know it, Zarathustra, but you do not say it. Zarathustra is as yet reluctant to fulfill his destiny. He has yet to become the child. She speaks to him further. It is the stillest words that bring on the storm. Thoughts that come on dove's feet guide the world. The Grade Saver summary. The follow-up. This final chapter of part 2 shows Zarathustra as a man torn apart by his double will. Zarathustra tells his disciples about a voice that came to him during the night during his stillest hour, and this voice goads Zarathustra to become more like a child. According to the voice, Zarathustra has grown weak and ineffectual. His love for mankind is keeping him from becoming the overman, and Zarathustra readily admits that he is weak. In this speech, it is clear that Zarathustra knows what is needed to effect the eternal return, or the eternal reoccurrence that is coming of the overman. This will must be able to accept the accident of humanity in time, as well as to show power over time. Zarathustra is reluctant to speak of his knowledge because he knows what fear will strike in the hearts of people once he does return with such power. As the speech closes, Zarathustra weeps openly at again having to leave his friends in the middle of the night. He once again walks away alone. So, oh man, I have a lot to say about this apparently. So, because I'm rereading Crowley, and I'm reading this all at like one time, and Crowley called Nietzsche a prophet of Thelema, the religion that Crowley kind of designed or whatever. But this whole thing right here, it could be talking about book 3, or even the earliest parts of Liber 3, or even the earliest parts of Liber 4, right? Becoming like Zarathustra to become like a child, and that's what Crowley's whole thing is the Aeon of Horus, the Aeon of the crowned and conquering child. According to this voice, Zarathustra has grown weak and ineffectual. So I'm just seeing like these interesting like juxtapositions. So the Wanderer is one of my favorite ones that we've gotten to. Zarathustra reflects that in all one's journeys, one ultimately experiences only oneself. This is a Jungian idea, right? All discovery is self-discovery. This is also what we were talking about in the Keys of Solomon episode. Like I mentioned this in the last episode. Like even Crowley, when in his foreword, because he translated the Lesser Key of Solomon, in his foreword to that, he said something like all the demons of the Lesser Key of Solomon is aspects of your own mind. This is magic as psychology, right? And here Zarathustra is talking about, it's all experiences. Wherever you go, whoever you experience, you're only experiencing yourself. All discovery is led to self-discovery, and he prepares for his most difficult journey yet. The Wanderer. This is the existentialism viewpoint. Zarathustra turns to confront his ultimate solitude. He climbs from the highest mountain down to the black and sorrowful sea. How is the sea a metaphor for Zarathustra's soul? Well, the sea is a metaphor for Zarathustra's soul, the way that the sea or water is a metaphor in psychology. It's about the subconscious, right? And when I read this, when I read this actual speech a few episodes ago, all I kept thinking I kept thinking of two songs. One was like Coming Down the Mountain, which is like the only Jane's Addiction song that I can even listen to. When I was in high school, I went to like it was like the first Lollapalooza, I guess. And like, I wanted to stay until I think the second headliner, and then the third headliner was Jane's Addiction. And I was like, all right, well, we could go after this because I don't give a fuck about Jane's Addiction. However, Coming Down the Mountain is a great song. It's a great song, but a greater song, Jimi Hendrix, Voodoo Child, do. It's what Bismarcky stole. Girl, I'm standing next to a mountain. And then he's like, I chop it down with the edge of my hand. All right, grade save. The wrap up here. Part 3 opens a short while after Zarathustra has left his disciples. He is venturing over a mountain ridge, and he chops it down with the edge of my hand. He's echoing the previous part's theme of ascension. This is also him, along with almost a lot of shit that he's talked about up to this point, is an eternal reoccurrence. To get to the ports on the other side of the Blessed Isles, and he plans to take a ship to cross the sea, and Zarathustra reflects on his nature as a wanderer. I'm the wanderer. I wander round and round and round and round, and a traveler. And on the last peak he stands before him now, the one thing that must be mastered to reach his ultimate goal of the Overman is his own self. He must dive within himself. Zarathustra is now alone, and he knows he must ascend beyond all things. As Zarathustra reaches the summit of the mountain, he gazes out over the sea, and he says that he is ready to descend into the pain and suffering that must accompany his final ascension. As he descends to the sea, he realizes that his great folly is his love of humanity. Love is the danger of the loneliest one, he says. Zarathustra knows that he must overcome his desire to love the disciple he has left behind if he is to finally ascend and become the Overman. The opening speeches that make up this chapter set the stage for the hardship that Zarathustra will have to face in Part 3. In the end of Part 2, Zarathustra identifies his love and his enchantment of humanity as the thing that ultimately holds him back from his destiny. This chapter gives Zarathustra time to reflect on the weakness as he journeys into loneliness and despair. All right, on to the next one. Sparknotes on the vision and the riddle. Courage helps us overcome everything, even death, by helping us look lightly at what would otherwise seem serious. Zarathustra suggests that courage can teach us to say to death, "What was that life? Well then, once more." Again, this is eternal reoccurrence. Thus, courage can also lead us to confront the eternal reoccurrence of the same events. If the past stretches back infinitely, then anything that could have happened must have happened already at some time in the past. By that logic, this very instant must have occurred at some time in the past. And similarly, if the future is infinite, everything including this moment must reoccur again sometime in the future. Zarathustra ends by recounting a vision where he saw a shepherd gagging on a snake in nausea. Oh, I remember reading that. That was crazy. Who then bit off the head of the snake and spat it out, erupting with laughter. The existentialism point of view on the vision and the riddle, Zarathustra dares his listeners, or we, the readers, to guess the meaning of the vision and riddle. This is the key section of the whole book. The point at which the thoughts of eternal reoccurrence is introduced. The drama of Thus Spake Zarathustra centers around Zarathustra's struggle to call up from the depths his most abysmal thought. And at this finally occurs in a confrontation with the spirit of gravity, in the gateway of the moment. The gateway here is surely the most creaking of all gates. From Zarathustra's dream in the soothsayer, here now in the gateway of the moment, Zarathustra has found a key. And after the revelation of his abysmal thought, there follows an incredibly nauseating vision of a man writhing on the ground with a snake hanging out of his mouth, and he bites through the snake and comes up changed, laughing, but no longer a human laughter. Can we guess at the meaning of the vision in this riddle? Well, let's follow up here. Zarathustra joins a ship that has come far away and wants to go still farther. For the first 2 days of his journey, Zarathustra refuses to speak to anyone on the ship because he is still overcome with sadness. Yet because he is a friend of all who make distant journeys and do not like to live without danger, he speaks finally. The ice of his heart is broken, and he tells the sailors a riddle that has come to him in a vision of the loneliest one. Zarathustra tells his disciples of a dwarf who accompanied Zarathustra on his journey, and this dwarf mocks him by saying that even though he tried to ascend to the greatest height, he must now fall like a stone. And Zarathustra eventually summons. That's also actually an instance of a sort of this eternal reoccurrence in this story, by the way. Think back to the tightrope walker. Okay. He summons the courage to confront the dwarf. This courage, like he says, is a pride of humanity because of the human being is the most courageous animal. Courage is the best slayer, he says. It can even slay death. As Zarathustra confronts this dwarf, it hops down from his shoulder and they find themselves standing before a gateway. And the gateway is marked moment. And there are two paths that have contradictory markings. They both claim to lead to an eternity. Zarathustra gives the dwarf a conundrum of time. Must not whatever can already have passed this way before? Must not whatever can happen already have happened, been done, passed before? This riddle is a representation of Zarathustra's teaching of the eternal return, or the eternal occurrence, or the eternal reoccurrence. The moment when the self accounts for and overcomes the restriction of time. His teaching here is purposefully enigmatic because he wants the sailors to use their imaginations to guess about whom Zarathustra is talking. Time is a great riddle. Both he and his listeners must reckon with the concept of eternal time in order to achieve an eternal return. God, God damn it. Later speeches will bring this riddle to light. Next speech on involuntary bliss. Zarathustra still feels unable to confront the thought of the eternal reoccurrence. He waits for the pain of this thought to come upon him, but he remains happy. The existentialists say on the blissfulness against one's will. Okay. Zarathustra begins to contemplate his abysmal or abyss deep thought, the thought of eternal reoccurrence. Great Saver says, Zarathustra continues to travel across the sea with bitterness in his heart until the afternoon of the fourth day. And on that afternoon, he begins to enjoy being alone, remembering the time when he first found his disciples and taught them. This memory makes his heart happy, so he knows now that he is going away from his disciples in order to complete himself. Such an act is actually an act of love for his disciples. Zarathustra is also overcoming his need for having disciples. Remember, when he first started this, after the introduction with the tightrope walker and this fucking asshole dwarf and all this, his whole drive was, I need to get disciples. So now he's learning to get rid of his disciples, or he's learning that he doesn't need to have disciples. Up to this point, his desire had been to teach others because of his love for mankind. Now he realizes he must cultivate only himself. Zarathustra then compares his disciples to trees that must be replanted in order to stand on their own. This is what his journey will eventually accomplish. In part 1, Zarathustra knows his disciples must betray him in order to grow. Now he sees a future time in which his disciples will be able to stand with him. As the sun begins to set, Zarathustra knows his disciples are sad because of his imminent departure. He wishes that the happiness of the afternoon will leave him and enter his disciples as night falls. Zarathustra waits for sadness to overtake him, but it never does. Zarathustra is again able to reflect. He ponders the signs that led him to leave these disciples, and he thinks about his prudent love for them that causes him to stay with them for so long. And now that he has found the strength to leave his disciples, the next feat of strength is to accomplish the task of overcoming himself, a task that he calls something still greater.
Learn more at abracast.com. Get bonus content and access to the private Abracast workgroup by signing up for the mailing list. Get all that plus many exclusive episodes by supporting the show at patreon.com or subscribestar.com.
Hey, that Slack work group, by the way, that Hill was just talking about, that Slack work group is, it's where I post all, so if you sign into the Fulgore Correspondentia or the mailing list, you get access to the tarot card info dump, which is great. You get to see, like, I believe by now the first draft of all of the tarot card deck I'm designing is up. At least the first or second draft. at this point. But that work group also has all the research that I've gotten from like 3 or 4 different books and stuff, and it's all so it's like my tarot card that I designed, and then all this information from Pappas and Waite and McGregor Mather. All that information for that specific card is like right there, all in one spot. So if you're interested in the tarot, or you just want to peek in on some fly fucking artwork, there you go. Anyhow, I didn't mean to make this into a commercial. I got to get going on this. Okay, before sunrise, Zarathustra praises the heavens as being above all reason and above all purpose. Ultimately, the universe is not directed by reason and purpose, but by chance and accident. The existentialist view says that over all things stand the heaven accident, the heaven innocence, the heaven contingency, and the heaven exuberance. All right, to follow up here, like the previous speech, the night song, the speech reveals something elemental about Zarathustra's teaching. While the night song relates Zarathustra's teaching on envy, before sunrise outlines his godlike desire as Zarathustra looks into the sky at twilight, and he uses religious language to speak of his desire for transcendence. He ascribes to the sky a kind of divinity. Here, Zarathustra begins to understand the silence. By the way, Crowley also used the sky as a divinity in the Book of the Law, the first chapter. Knew it. Here, Zarathustra begins to understand the silence of the heavens and promise to emulate such silence. The sky's beauty is what gives the sky its power. Zarathustra is coming to understand himself as he is common to understand the nature of the sky. He rejects the old notions of toiling underneath the sky. Instead, he embraces the sky as a divine presence and giver of life. Again, Zarathustra curses the scholars by comparing them to the clouds that strain the sky. These people who learn neither to bless nor to curse wholeheartedly rob Zarathustra of his infinite yes and amen. Zarathustra is seeking that which is beyond the middling values of this world, beyond such constructs of good and evil. Zarathustra is now free to bask in his happiness. He seeks to baptize the world with his knowledge and with his eternal return. Zarathustra is on a journey to become like the heavens, and he wants to become a being who is not governed by external reason or rationality. Zarathustra is seeking not to be responsible to any being higher than himself. Welcome to America. On virtue that makes small. Zarathustra returns among people to find that they have grown smaller while he was away, so that he must now stoop to be among them. Their desire for a contentment, and above all, their desire not to be hurt by anyone, have made them small. I've got to reread that. Not for you. I need to reread it for me. Zarathustra returns among people to find that they have grown smaller while he was away, so that he must now stoop to be among them. This is the important part. Their desire for contentment, and above all, their desire not to be hurt by anyone, have made them small. So I've said probably 100 times during this series that Nietzsche predicting social justice warriors or the current millennials, the safe space people. And I mean, it's right there. It's right there. Their desire not to be hurt by anyone have made them small. It's made them childlike. It's made them weak. They call this cowardice virtue, social justice warriors, which they express through a constant aim to please and to gratify only themselves. Zarathustra has no respect for people who are unable to assert their own will. The existentialist says, further critique of morality, virtue makes smaller and mediocre. That's interesting, too, as well. The age of mediocrity. I need to underline that. Grade Saver, the follow-up. Hold on. On virtue that makes small. Zarathustra returns to his homeland, but instead of immediately venturing back to his mountain, he decides to stay and learn what has transpired among these human beings. He wants to find if human beings have become bigger or smaller, and he sees a row of houses and he marvels at what they mean. He determines that during his absence, human beings have become smaller. He then begins his speech on the virtue that makes humanity small. In his speech, Zarathustra says that humanity has become smaller because of the teachings about happiness and virtue. These teachings are actually impediments to the true teachings of Zarathustra. They are an obstacle to anyone who is in a hurry to become the overman. The people do not forgive Zarathustra for shunning their ideas of virtue. The people envy the freedom that Zarathustra has attained. Humanity clings to the modern teaching of virtue, and Zarathustra hypothesizes because it wants to preserve comfort and prosperity. This has made humanity cowardly, and it has taken away the courage needed to face death. During the second part of the speech, Zarathustra mocks those who look down on him. The people, he says, are amazed to find that he has not come like other prophets to give them the same old teachings or praise them for their virtue. They do not understand that he is standing on the precipice of a new age. He taunts the people by telling them that he is the godless one. He is not like the other prophets because his message is not about virtue or morality. He taunts them because they have not progressed. They have become smaller. Zarathustra finishes by telling the people that he is an example of his own message and that the hour of his ultimate ascension is near. This speech is a recognition of the old teachings of Christian virtue and modern philosophy's teaching of the self have failed to adequately advance the human race. Zarathustra, partly seeking to shock humanity into hearing his message and partly trying to offend those he sees as below him, chastises the people like John the Baptist. He announces the coming of a new age. Zarathustra will eventually eclipse these people, and they will see the ultimate state of humanity, the Overman. All right, here's the summary. Upon the Mount of Olives, Zarathustra takes a malicious pleasure in the winter and the difficulty it imposes. If people could only see his boundless depth and happiness, they would resent him. But if they see him suffer, they will no longer feel jealous. The existentialist view is, what is winter a metaphor for here? So I feel like this existentialism paper is getting lazier as this book is going on, but whatever. I committed to it. We'll just ride it out. The follow-up from Grade Saver. This speech is a song for the season of winter, a season to which Zarathustra compares his own state. A winter, he says, is a hard-hearted state, a state full of silence that kills those who wish to make noise. Winter is an introverted season, encouraging a silent state that Zarathustra has come to love ever since the speech before sunrise. Zarathustra sits in the market during the winter and practices his new state of being. He is talkative with the people, but only in a way that allows them to pity him, while he keeps silent about the great secrets he holds. Zarathustra does not let his soul conceal anything, yet neither does he comply or completely withdraw from people. Let them hear me chatter and sigh from winter cold, he says. All these wretched, leering rascals around me, with such sighing and chattering, I still escape their heated rooms. And Zarathustra is learning to temper his love of humanity while learning to live among men. Zarathustra says that winter is perfect metaphor for such a state. It is frigid season that repels people and causes their silence. It is a death-like season. Yet the cold must also necessarily live among the people, in their villages, in their marketplaces. Like Zarathustra, the cold is a state that the people cannot avoid. On passing by, the summary. The entrance to a large city, Zarathustra encounters a foaming fool called Zarathustra's ape, who has learned to copy much of what Zarathustra says, and he warns Zarathustra not to enter the city because it is full of small people and small minds. Zarathustra stops his triad, saying that the ape despises these people for all the wrong reasons. He despises because he resents the people for not flattering him enough, whereas Zarathustra despises out of love of what these people could be. Zarathustra suggests that this fool should leave the city if he hates it so much. Where one can no longer love, there one should pass by. The existentialist lazily says Zarathustra passes by a great city, which is like a swamp of humankind. And to sum up with Grade Saver, after wandering among the people, Zarathustra comes to the gate of the big city. There, at the gate, is a man who supposedly is a disciple of Zarathustra. This disciple tries to imitate Zarathustra's teaching. Zarathustra stops to listen to the man, and his words do resemble Zarathustra's teaching in some way. The man curses the city and mocks its citizens for their decadence and their low spirit. The man implores his listeners to spit on this city and to look down upon it. And the people call this teacher Zarathustra's ape because he imitates Zarathustra's words. Yet his teaching is incomplete. While he mocks the city, he has no vision of what is next. For what is higher, Zarathustra looks at the city, and as though he feels disgust and contempt for it, he gives the ape a piece of advice. Where one can no longer love, there one should pass by. This speech shows how Zarathustra's teaching has been distorted in the public realm. The people mock this ape just as they mock Zarathustra, but Zarathustra is angry with this man Although he echoes some of Zarathustra's words, he does not comprehend the ultimate sacrifice that is becoming the overman. Zarathustra's teaching to pass by shows that his own teaching has matured, although he still despises the city, just as the false disciple does. He no longer feels the need to condemn it publicly. Instead, he feels he can pass by the city as well as the fool who purports to be his disciple. All right. We're going to end here. I'm John. I've been John. This has been the Abercast. So Hilla's going to tell you some stuff. I would ask you guys, if you're thinking about supporting the show, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and support the show. You get some cool stuff. If you can't support the show, at least sign into the mailing list. You get some cool stuff there. Coupling with the mailing list, you actually get access to like the designs of the tarot cards I was talking about earlier. There's a section on the website that has all the tarot cards featured, and then the Slack work group has the individual tarot cards plus like all the research. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, check it out. After you check it out, you can just get out if you want. You can punch out, whatever. But yeah, so hopefully you think about that. And thank you guys. Thank you so much. I look at my numbers all the time, and I feel like weird and blessed and everything. That's like so many people invite me into their week, like into their work day or into their work week or their lives, to tell these stories and to talk shit about Nietzsche and the Overman or about aliens or whatever I'm doing on the Sunday show. So I just want to say thank you guys a lot. I am totally humble. And I guess if you say I'm humble, maybe you're not humble. I don't know. That's not a humble brag. I don't know. I'm just trying to say thank you. Anyhow, I'm out. I'm embarrassing myself. I got real high last night. Like, I'm still feeling it. It's so crazy. I'm John. This is the Evercast. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.
Standing next to a mountain, I chop it down with the edge of my hand.